It's game time, so get your strap and strapped. The magic sponge doused and the oranges cut, chilled and quartered as we take the field for WCBH Darwin Sports Radio. WCBH Darwin Sports Radio.
Joining me on the line from Geelong, as always, is Jono. Jono, good to speak. Last week was round 10 in the AFL.
Yeah, Cam, great to hear your voice once again. And round 10 in the AFL, gee, it started well with my Cats, didn't it?
It certainly did. Now, I was racking my brain this morning. You tipped the Lions in this one, didn't you? Because I think I mentioned that you weren't really rock solid with your Cats.
Yeah, you have a very good memory, Cam. I thought you might have let that one slip through to the keeper. And in actual fact, how wrong was I with a 41-point victory to the Cats?
Tremendous up there at Brisbane, 117-76.
Exceptional. They started well, and there was a point in the second quarter where Brisbane hit the front, and I thought, oh, here we go. And all I could see was grand final day once again reoccurring in front of my eyes. And then the Cats kicked the last couple of the second quarter, went in half-time with a couple of goal buffer, and then after half-time they came out and Sean Manor was exceptional. He kicked 3 goals in a couple of minutes and the Cats were away. But it says a lot for, one of the in things in the AFL over the last, I don't know, however many years has been a player kicks a goal and he turns and runs to the bench. Whereas it's just like, keep the hot players on the ground. And that was a perfect example of that. Manor's kicked 3 in a couple of minutes. And if he had have run to the bench after that first one, that doesn't eventuate, does it?
No, very true. So what is it? It's unlimited interchange on the AFL bench?
No, there is a capped interchange. But generally a rule has been, because after a goal's kicked, there's a little bit of downtime. So, okay, the guy that kicks the goal, you run off so we can get our structure set up for the next centre bounce. And that's how they buy a few seconds to sort themselves out. But, yeah, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, particularly when a player's going well.
No, when you're hot, you're hot. So stay on the field and kick some more. Sydney Swans, 81, 6-point winners over the Collingwood Magpies, 75. Top of the table, Swans had to work hard for this one.
Yeah, they did, Cam. And the week before, the Pies were monstered by the Cats on the MCG, as and the Pies, they came out beautifully. They were 5 goals up for quite an amount of time. It was wet in Sydney, and Collingwood, they covered up the corridor well, which Sydney liked to come in through the middle and play a real fast game through the middle of the game. And Collingwood just blocked the corridor for them, and they struggled, the Swans. But as good teams do, they find a way, and they ended up getting over the line in the end and coming back, and it was a great victory by the Swannies.
Certainly did. Now, the Gold Coast Suns made it 10 from 10 in Darwin over 5 years, 98-73 over Port Power. Another good win for the Suns at TIO Stadium.
Yeah, 10 for 10. It's not a bad record, is it? They love it up there in Darwin. And it's nice to see a lot of those players getting out and about. And Christian Petrarca, the first time being up in Darwin with the Suns, I actually saw footage of him, Cam, out on a fishing charter where he got to be about a metre 10 plus jewfish on the charter. So they had some good times, the Suns boys, while up there.
Certainly did, and they certainly make themselves part of the community. We've mentioned this before. It's what happens next after they leave Darwin. That's where they need to really focus in on now.
Yeah, most definitely. And I saw the other day, Cam, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this one, but the last 3 years post-Darwin, the Gold Coast Suns have lost 3 of their following 4 games for the last 3 years. So the next month will determine, I suppose, where they finish at the end of the year.
Because there's a massive difference in previous seasons between top 4 and 5 to 8. And this year, with the wildcard round, you don't want to be playing in a wildcard game. You want to finish somewhere in the top 6 and avoid being in those elimination games.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And ideally, top 4 is where you want to be. If you can't get that, 5 and 6, your next best option. But yeah, definitely want to stay away from 7, 8, 9 and 10 if you can help it.
So that was the last year in the 5-year deal. We would love to see the Gold Coast Suns up here again next year. Do you think we're a decent chance of seeing the Suns again next year?
I hope so, because I think it's been fantastic for Darwin. And although I did hear even Damien Hardwick had a little bit of negativity about his press conference last week, hinting at the fact of post-Darwin and what happens post-Darwin. And obviously the stats don't lie where they've lost 3 of their next 4 for the last 3 seasons. So hopefully the Suns can come out and win a few games and, there's another signature put on the dotted line and they go back to TIO because I think it's great.
It is, and every time they come up, the talk starts again in the local football community about the Northern Territory's push for an AFL licence. Is this just one big dream that we have up here, or do you think that there's any possibility, any permutation that could take place where we end up with a team?
I hope you do. I think it's just deserves. The amount of fans in Darwin that follow AFL and fanatic fans, mind you, I think Darwin deserves a team. The NT needs a team. The AFL's focus now is purely on Tasmania first and getting them up and running. So, the pipe dream might be 10 years down the track, but if it is, I hope it is the case because I think it'd be fantastic.
10 years down the track is fine. Something to work toward. I think you're right. You picked yourself up there. It can't just be a Darwin team. It's got to be a Northern Territory team based in Darwin, but play a couple of matches down in Central Australia at Alice Springs. And it's got to be something that is really seen to be a Northern Territory team. Saying that, our local footy teams up here, your Nightcliff, your Southern Districts, your St Mary's, your Tiwi Bombers, they still fly players in and out every week from down south to play in the local competition. So it couldn't be stocked and staffed purely on Territorian players. There would have to be a significant import element to a local team up here.
Oh, without doubt. And, obviously that's relocating families, that's, moving careers and a whole lot for players but that can happen. That's an easy fix. And could you imagine, Cam? Imagine down the track if there was a gather round held in Darwin. Could you imagine? Where would the games be held?
Well, you and I have had this conversation on air previously, haven't we? We need a big stadium in the centre of town. Build it and they will come.
Most definitely. And gee, that would be an absolute treat of a weekend if all AFL clubs ended up in Darwin. What a dream that would be.
Oh, it would be a fantastic place for an app gather round because I think there would be, that real sort of maybe not party's not the right word, but that gather round element of something a little bit different coming together. You can imagine teams going out into the different remote communities, being tagged with a different community, spending some time out there, coming back in and getting that real festival type atmosphere going on, which we've just seen in Magic Round at Suncorp Stadium in the rugby league. And I tell you what, rugby league does that so very well.
Yeah, they do. The AFL have picked up gather round and they've run with it too, and it is quite the event now.
Now, did I see something earlier in the week I saw that Hawthorn, because you mentioned Tasmania, Hawthorn's relationship playing games in Tasmania, that's going to come to an end?
Yeah, at the end of next year. So the AFL, and I'm not totally over this, Cam. I have heard it, but and seen it on the tally. But the long and the short of it is that the AFL are withdrawing Hawthorn from Tasmania to make the sole focused Tasmania for the Devils and get the state right behind them. But Hawthorn have spent 25 years playing, I think, 3 or 4 games a year at Launceston, which has been fantastic. And hearing Sam Mitchell, the coach of Hawthorn, speak, and there's quite some disappointment you can hear in his voice, as well as the relationships that they've made over the years by going down to Launceston. And also, Lonnie's obviously benefited greatly from having the horse go down there. But yeah, the AFL wants to throw all the eggs in the Tassie Devils basket, and Hawthorn are out.
Both make sense. You can understand the AFL's desire for the Devils to be the sole focus down there. But the reality is the Devils don't happen as a team, as a franchise, if the Hawks didn't invest 25 years going down there and showing that Tasmania can sustain an AFL team.
Correct. You've nailed it right on the head there, Cam. That's spot on.
All right, let's get back to last week's round 10. We took a couple of little detours there. Adelaide Crows, big win over the North Melbourne Kangaroos.
Big win. The Kangas were sort of thereabouts up until quarter time, and then the Crows came out in the second quarter and kicked 10 goals, and they made North look pretty silly, and it was almost North of 4 or 5 years ago, and was a little bit of a step back for the Kangaroos, and hopefully they can bounce back this week and find the form that they'd been showing in previous weeks.
The D's, 120. The Hawks, 81. 39 points the margin.
Now, I'd actually tipped the D's in my tips, Cam. I can't recall whether I did with you or not, but I was quite chuffed that I did because I was one of the only few that actually picked the D's, so I was happy about that. But they were fantastic, and they're playing some great footy, and Stephen King's done a tremendous job with Melbourne. If you had said Melbourne would have been 7-3 at the start of the year, you'd be laughed at, but they are flying.
So good to see. And well done on that tip there. It's great when you make a tip and everyone doesn't make it because it's a chance for you to move one spot up the ladder, which is just crucial in tipping competitions.
It's a 2-goal turnaround, isn't it?
It is. Now, I want to talk about this one a little bit because I sent you the message after this game. I feel for Vossi after Carlton 74 defeated the Western Bulldogs 62. Why couldn't they have done it while he was there as coach?
It just goes to show the game is played above the shoulders, isn't it? Like, yes, the Doggies didn't have a great night. Yes, the Doggies have got some injury concerns, but they're also were touted as, a side that can win the flag a few weeks back prior to getting some of these injuries. So, yes, why couldn't they do it for Vossi? It just doesn't make sense. And I actually feel for the Doggies, and a mate of mine who is he's a Doggy supporter told me last week that this was the 11th occasion over however many years in recent history where the Dogs have fronted up against a side that had sacked the coach that week.
So if you're going to sack your coach, you
You're going
wait till you got to play the Dogs and do it the week before.
exactly, and we know what happens when the coach gets sacked. As we spoke
again.
last week, they come out and win, and the poor Doggies, they're always on the receiving end.
Freo, they travelled to Melbourne. Good win over the Bombers, but the poor old Bombers still sitting way down the bottom of the ladder.
The poor old Bombers were made to look silly for the best part of this game, and they put up a better showing later in the second half, but the game was done and dusted early, and the Dockers are rolling along nicely, aren't they?
They certainly are. And the next one, Saints, made, as expected, defeated the Tigers.
Yeah, the poor Tigers. Last week, they did not have an AFL listed player in their reserve side. They've got that many injuries. There was talk earlier in the week or post of this game where even a couple of players went down with, minor injuries and whether they'd come up for the following week. And there was discussion whether or not they'd be able to field a team and whether they'd have to bring ring-ins in to play AFL football off the street. It's phenomenal.
That is a quite amazing set of circumstances to be getting down to the ring-ins talk.
We've never seen it before, and the poor Tigers. We've spoken about this every week about their injury list, but it's gone to another level now. So I did hear their general manager of football the other day say they might have a few players return this week. So they're not totally out of the woods, but hopefully they'll be able to field a side.
Is spoon bowl a thing in the AFL? We talk about spoon bowl in the league.
What's spoon bowl, Cam? I've never heard it.
So the clash that will happen it's usually in the back end of the season.
Yeah.
Where there's two teams down the bottom and someone's going to win the game and the team that loses it likely wraps up the wooden spoon.
Yeah. Sorry, I've never heard that term used ever.
Spoon bowl.
Well, at the moment, we're sort of looking at Tigers and Bombers.
We are. Both on 4 points.
Who face off this weekend. So in the Dreamtime game at the MCG. So they're the two sides that are most likely staring down the wooden spoon. As bring us into our next result last week, the Eagles overcoming the Giants in a fantastic win over in Perth last weekend by 17 points. So they'll have a little bit of a spring in their step. The Eagles particularly coming down to Melbourne this weekend for Scotty Pendlebury's game record-breaking game.
I tipped that Eagles win over GWS last week just quietly.
Yeah, no. I was trying not to bring it up, but thank you for bringing it up.
Well, let's start on Thursday night. The Hawks take on the Crows. This is down in Tasmania.
It's funny, isn't it ironic that the Hawks are going down there tomorrow night to take on the Crows and the week where they've been pulled away from going down there for good. So, yeah, it's strange. But the Hawkies, they need to bounce back after the Demons result last week. They're a good side. They've had a few injury concerns, as a lot of teams do. But, yeah, you've got to get the wins, and you'd expect them to overcome Adelaide over there, but it's not going to be any walkover, that's for sure.
Adelaide had a great win against the Kangaroos. I'm gonna tip the Crows in an upset.
Yeah, no, quite easily. I reckon toss of the coin this one, Cam.
You gonna prepared to put a tip either way?
I'm going to go the Hawks purely because they know Launceston. That's it.
Fair enough. All right. Spoon Bowl, early season Spoon Bowl. They'll probably the other things will happen later in the season, but 18 versus 17 Tigers v Bombers.
Well, this is also a toss of the coin, and you sort of have to lean towards the Bombers purely of the fact that Richmond have got so many injuries, but the Bombers have been disgusting, and you just can't see how they can win a game of footy. And if they're not going to win this one, they won't win one. So you're going to have to tip the Bombers.
Who's playing with more heart?
Well, that's what it might boil down to in the end, doesn't it? Like,
Mm.
across the paddock, the Bombers look like a classier team. Well, it's hard to say that, isn't it? But a classier outfit on paper, purely because of the guys that Richmond are missing. But yeah, if they don't get this one, the Bombers, it's the will be asking questions of Brad Scott.
All right. So we're saying Bombers because of the Tigers injury list.
Only reason.
Yeah. Okay. Freo over there in Perth, Optus Stadium, up against the Saints.
Yeah, the Dockers are the real deal, Cam. They can win it this year. There's no question. And one of the greatest flaws in their game over the years has been able to, or the inability to win games in Melbourne, and they're doing that now. So they're racking up enough wins to finish in the top four. And if they finish in the top two, they don't leave Perth until grand final day. So they're setting themselves up beautifully. And I think that'll continue against the Saints this week.
Yeah. I'm going to tip the boys in purple there. My team, the Gold Coast Suns, taking on my second favourite team in the Kangaroos. That is down in there in Melbourne. Can the Suns leave Darwin and get a win?
Well, this is the question. They could quite easily buck the trend of recent years and get a win here, fueling on what North Melbourne dished up last week. But the North, bounced back and regained the form that we've seen them play prior. And do the Suns come down a little bit lethargic after spending couple of weeks in Darwin? Time will tell. But I think the Suns, they're just going to have to be too classy in this one, aren't they?
Yeah, of course I'm going to tip my Suns. What is it about Darwin? Is it just the dehydration, the different weather, the different humidity? Is it that is what they struggle to get over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, it is. And I think it would have been, I don't know, but I presume the recovery would have been quite extensive for the next week in between games up there for the Suns. And in saying that, this week as well. So I wouldn't expect them to have done a lot of work out on the track this week. It'll be all recovery and getting up again for the Kangaroos.
It's phenomenal to think that it can have such an impact. Like I understand and I accept it, but you think it's only 4 hours away. How can that have such a massive impact
Yeah.
on the body and the performance for the next few weeks? But let's talk about your Cats up against the top of the table Swans.
Well, this will be a cracker. And Geelong at home, I'd probably just say, yes, I'll tip the Cats being at home, but the Swans are a quality outfit. Even on radio this week, it was touted this could possibly be an opening for the two grand final sides to have a crack at each other. So I know we're going a bit early, but these are the two form teams of the comp at present. So yeah, toss of the coin. Sydney could come down here and get the Cats, but again, the Cats are playing some good footy, so I'm going to have to tip them at home.
Are you going to go to this game?
No, I'm not going to this game, Cam.
I'm going to tip your Cats. But yeah, it's going to be a cracker, isn't it?
It will.
All right, Collingwood up against the Eagles, Battle of the Birds.
Battle of the Birds. Scotty Pendlebury breaks the games record this weekend with 433 games. He has been an absolute legend of the game, Scotty Pendlebury. He just makes, every time the ball's in his hand, it just looks as though the game's in slow motion. He grew up as a basketballer, a late child, adolescent basketballer and state league player and so on. So he has all the time in the world, this fella, and he has forever. He's been an absolute ornament of the game, and yeah, good on Scotty Pendlebury. But it's fantastic that this week the Perth media have got on board Harley Reid, who's playing his 50th game, and they're really pumping that up to go across for Harley's 50th game.
Trying to overshadow 433.
Yeah, they're trying to steal the limelight, and the number 1 draft pick from a few years ago, and their golden boy, Harley Reid, who I think features on the front page or the back page of the paper half a dozen times a week over there in Perth. They love him. And, they're pumping up his 50th.
The words that I keep reading, keep hearing, I even heard it in song this morning. Every time you hear Pendlebury, you hear time and space.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It looks slow motion when he gets the ball in his hands. He rarely makes a mistake. The form he's playing at the moment, he could go for another 4 years. But
Well, you say that he could go for another 4 years. Tell me why he's been nursed through at the moment, a week on, week off. What's the strategy behind that?
no, I think he actually did it. I heard him speak the other day, and he said he did have an Achilles issue a few weeks ago. And then obviously, I think Collingwood wanted to play the record-breaking game at the MCG.
Right.
Yeah, Kane Corns came out during the week or the other night and said to West Coast, if this isn't the greatest motivation of all time to go over and get a win, the fact that Collingwood have penciled you guys in to come and be part of Pendlebury's game's record-breaking game and have a big celebration knowing that they're going to get a win, some decent motivation there for the Eagles.
And Collins might be onto something there. Do you think Collingwood have sort of manipulated a little bit, sort of almost like, here's one we absolutely can lock in a win, and
Have a big celebration.
they saw that West Coast game as his. We could already have the balloons, the champagne on ice, the streamers, the fireworks all ready to go because they think they're absolute locked in favourites for this one.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. But if we look back, the 2 games that Pendlebury's missed in recent weeks, last week the Swans, they went down by a goal. You could argue that if he played, they probably would have won. And then 2 weeks prior to that, there was a draw against Hawthorn. And you could argue that if he played in that, they would have won. So they may have shot themselves in the foot to a certain degree there.
Yeah, look, I hope he's been out for legitimate reasons and it hasn't been some sort of celebration type strategy. It just doesn't quite sit right with me. But I will tip the Magpies and congratulations to Pendlebury, 433.
Yeah, superstar.
All right, Power and the Blues. Can the Blues go back to back?
They can. They need to do everything right against the Power at home. And the Power at home are, we've mentioned previously, they're a different kettle of fish than when they come across to Melbourne or interstate. They do play a better brand of football at Footy Park, or Adelaide Oval, I should say. In saying that, I think they should have the firepower to get over the top of the Blues. Carlton have been thereabouts in games this year, and we know that they've had those massive fade-outs in the second half, which they didn't have last week, and they didn't have the week before against Brisbane. They actually had a good second half against the Lions. But I think the Power at home should be too strong, Cam.
Yep, I'll tip the Power there. GWS up against the Brisbane Lions. This is in Sydney.
It's sort of hard to see the Giants come back after being defeated by West Coast and overtopping the reigning premiers, isn't it? So I'm going to have to go with the Lions.
Yeah, I'll be tipping the Lions there. And then the Western Bulldogs up against the D's. It is at Marvel Stadium. I'm going to tip the D's in this one. I think based on last week's performance from both teams, the D's should be specials.
Yeah, I agree, Cam. And just looking, and we don't condone betting by any stretch of the imagination, but the odds on this game, they're actually quite close together. I would have thought Melbourne would be a lot more in front than what they are, particularly with the favouritism, because I think they should get over top of the doggies here and get them comfortably.
Agreed. All right, Jono, well, been great to chat. As always, we've managed to go well over our allotted time, but enjoy the football this weekend. Go your Cats and go my Suns.
Go the Cats and go the Suns.
It's game time. So get your strap and strapped. The magic sponge doused and the oranges cut. Chilled and quartered as we take the field for WCBH Darwin Sports Radio. WCBH Darwin Sports Radio.